I'm State Representative Paul Torkelson, Deputy Leader of the GOP caucus in the Minnesota House. Today, the DFL majority will be bringing their policy and finance bills for education and child care to the floor. On education, the DFL bill focuses on mandates, micromanaging our schools, restricting student discipline, making it harder for teachers and school leaders to maintain order in the classroom, and closing pathways to licensing, leaving our schools with fewer teachers. The Republicans have introduced a practical alternative for education and will be offering an amendment to provide funding and flexibility, local control, innovation, and a focus on literacy. To promote early education and affordable childcare, the Republicans continue to support increased funding in the proven model of early learning scholarships. These scholarships are portable, flexible, and parent empowering. With me today to discuss further the DFL proposal and our Republican priorities are Representatives Ron Kresha on education finance, Representative Peggy Bennett on education policy, and Representative Walter Hudson on children and families. Representative Kresha.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Torkelson, and thank you, Deputy Leader. So members, what we have today is a very top-down authoritative finance bill. The DFL has missed the opportunities that were in front of us with a very strong surplus. We could have provided funding that would have given local communities the ability to be more innovative and less restrictive and more collaborative with their communities. And instead, what we're seeing is over 65 mandates that override the local control and creativity of our schools. These decisions permeate all the way down to classroom management, to curriculum, and into policies that the school board and the executives need to put in place. Our school leaders, our students, our parents, and our community sent a very strong message to us when we were out door knocking in before November, and that was, provide us with the resources. They did not ask for any mandates. This lays the groundwork for a career in bureaucracy and MDE, and it takes away the pathways of teachers that are coming in and that could be introduced through some of the tier structures that were set up to bring teachers in, allow them to grow in their profession. They close the door to those teachers, and many of those, by the way, are young professionals of diverse backgrounds. And so what we've done here is we've made it harder to get into the teaching profession instead of easier in a time of teacher shortage. Our alternative is funding and flexibility. Our alternative would have been a strong 5 and 5 in the formula with a 50% reduction of the state cross-subsidy for special education, $250 million for the science of reading, and by the way, we would say the science of reading. We would put in practices. We wouldn't shy away from the fact that there are strong foundations of learning and science of reading that's demonstrated. Instead, what we see in the DFL proposal is shying away from that and not calling out what is really a proven strategy. Our priority is pretty clear. We want to set measurable goals of academic achievement and allow our communities to strive and reach for those goals. We are not seeing that in this bill. In fact, what we're seeing is constraints and mandates that put school districts and students at a disadvantage to success. And with that, I'll turn it over to our policy lead, Representative Peggy Bennett.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Peggy Bennett. I represent 23A. I'm a former teacher of 33 years in the Albert Lea area. I love kids. I love our schools. So it's been a pleasure to serve on the education committees. I want to start out just talking about some policy things and defining some of the policy that we see in this DFL bill that we believe is harmful and not at all helpful to schools and helpful to our students. First of all, closing the pathways to licensure. Why would we do that when we have a teacher shortage? Why would we do that when there's no evidence there's a problem with the tier 2, which they're getting rid of? It makes no sense. There are obviously some pressures in the background somewhere, some groups that don't like this. They want it out. It's something we negotiated well back in, was it 2017, I believe, and give and take, and it's been working well. There's absolutely no reason to get rid of the Tier 2. This bill is soft on discipline. You know, one thing I learned when I taught first grade is if you don't hold kids accountable for their behavior, that behavior gets worse. And that's what we're seeing. This bill causes students not to experience the consequences for their behaviors that they need to experience as young people so that when they grow up as adults, they can thrive in the world that we live in. This bill is huge on mandates and huge on bureaucrats. There's, 65 some mandates on schools in this bill, which means that takes away local control and puts the control at the state level. I remember as a teacher having to do things that made absolutely no sense because the legislature said so. You know what? The legislature is not the school board. We have local school boards. They're the ones that should set policy. This bill takes that away. So our alternative, first of all, local control is innovation. And I just said why. That's the best control, the best decisions that we can make for our kids come at the local level. They're the ones that know our kids the best. They're the ones that know what works and what doesn't work. What works for Minneapolis doesn't necessarily work for Albert Lea. So we need to have that local control and innovation. Decisions made furthest from the parents involve the parent last. That's wrong. Parents must be involved in their education and engaged. This takes away that engagement. Literacy is learning. That's why we need the science of reading, and we shouldn't be afraid to call it science of reading. We also shouldn't be afraid to fund it well so that our districts are able to transition to curriculum that works. When only half our students can read at grade level, that's a crisis demanding an emergency response. And I'll just add one thing. Last evening in the governor's address, he talked about banning books, which is a misnomer. We always protect children from certain types of things, and it's appropriate to do that in the right places. But I'll tell you one thing, every book is banned when a child can't read. Expectations matter. We cannot lower standards for teachers and then expect to find better teachers. Those, the tests that they're removing from teachers, they should have been tweaked, of course, but you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We must have verification that our teachers understand the basics, especially in the science of reading, by the way, and they're taking away that one too. We cannot lower expectations for students and expect high-achieving students. So thank you so much. I'm now going to introduce Representative Hudson.
Good morning. My name is Representative Walter Hudson. I represent District 30A, which is in northeastern Wright County, St. Michael, Albertville area. I'm here today both as an elected state representative and as a father who's raised 2 boys along with my wife. And everyone I know loves their kids. It's a universal value. The issue here is not whether or not we're going to take care of our children in the state of Minnesota, but whether or not the methods that are being prescribed are actually going to have that effect. And what we're seeing with the Democrats' proposal for children and families is, unlike their inability to fully fund education, they're going to fully fund fraud. In 2019, CCAP fraud investigators estimated nearly $100 million in fraud, and the bill that has been provided by the Democrats today and is coming to the floor fails to truly acknowledge the full scope of that problem. We're also undermining our family child care providers, so the folks who take care of children in their own homes. The DFL priorities and policies saw a loss of nearly 700 family child care providers since July 1st of 2021. That's not taking care of our families and our family child care providers. We're creating a pipeline to poverty with this bill, ironically. We're repealing the diversionary work program, which is a program that is designed to try to intervene and keep people from falling into the MFEP system. And instead, we're creating this on-ramp to just shuttle them onto that program. We're creating a bloated bureaucracy, a brand new state department, a brand new state agency. The new Department of Children, Youth, and Families is simply a plan to rearrange the deck chairs on a ship that's sailing in the wrong direction. There is no plan to reduce redundancies. There is no plan to remove bureaucratic roadblocks or to increase efficiencies or lower compliance costs for providers and fees for families. In fact, there's, in an effort that's supposedly supposed to create efficiencies and affect a consolidation, there isn't going to be the removal of one FTE. They're going to have the same number of employees in both of the existing departments, all of the existing departments that they have today, and just add another department right alongside it. So this is just growth of government. There is no efficiency in this bill. Our alternative is to increase the purchasing power of parents to fund their providers of choice. And we're going to do that by prioritizing early learning scholarships, which are flexible, they're portable, and they're parent empowering. Parents should be in the driver's seat of their children's childcare. We're going to shut down fraud and increase resources for families and childcare providers. $100 million lost in fraud is $100 million that cannot be used for eligible families and children. And that is something that the Democrats have failed to acknowledge. And we're going to take care of our family child care providers by making them part of the solution. A robust and affordable child care system must include our family child care providers and meet the needs of families and communities that they serve. With that, I'll turn it back over to our leadership.
So with that, before we take questions, I just want to call out to the amazing group behind us. We have teachers, we have nursing home administrators, we have social workers, we have lawyers, we have business owners. We have an eclectic group of all who know that success starts with the students in schools. So we come to you not just with a political bent, we come to you with a solutions-oriented group that says we need to fix this and we need to reform education. So with that, we'll love to take some questions. Or not, thank you very much.
When I talk about reading, it strikes me this bill has some pretty significant gains toward ending the reading wars. Are you really going to hang this on the nomenclature? Or why wouldn't you want to declare victory that you seem to be finally moving toward curricula that is effective?
You're correct that this bill moves toward the things we should be moving toward, but we can't just simply move toward something like a turtle. Our kids can't afford that. We have half the kids in our state that cannot read at grade level. So unfortunately, the language in this bill does not address the science of reading directly. And when you don't use those words, it allows for wiggle room, and it allows for those instructors, it's more at the academic levels, it's not the teachers. They're being lied to and told that all these other things work when they don't. But this bill, unfortunately, what I disagree with most about it is it doesn't get to the crux, which is we need to be forthright and say science of reading, and it doesn't. It calls things evidence-based. Well, that allows for wiggle room, and it allows for the same things to continue to be taught in the same way in our classrooms. We can't afford that. We have to make a clear change, and this bill doesn't do that. So I agree, there are portions, and it's better than nothing, I will tell you that, but it's not going to fix the problem the way it needs to be fixed.
And if I could just add to that, thank you, Peggy. People say we're splitting hairs on the science of reading. Words matter, especially in reading, folks. And when we say the science of reading, we're not talking about just reading. We're talking about practices that work. We're talking about abandoning some of the creativity, the, hey, try to get this right, that I saw my kids do in reading, for science-based practices of phonetics and understanding how language works and understanding the cognitive abilities that come with reading. When we give in to the groups that say, well, let's not call it the science of reading, those are the groups that have opposed and come up with reading practices that don't work. So yes, defining the problem, defining the solution matters when it comes to this.
65 mandates you've said there. Could you list a few of them, maybe the worst ones that would be most undesirable?
Sure. A couple of them are mandating the bargaining, mandating classroom size, mandating those that have to be talked about. Schools have a bargaining agreement. We're mandating the way curriculum is handled on ethnic studies. We're mandating that we have to pay people not to work with the UI, and the list can go on and on. These schools are already handling this. They did not come to the legislature saying, give us 65 prescriptive ways for us to do our job. They said, give us the resources, give us a 5 and 5, and allow us to get back to the students and allow us to hire teachers.
How much cash is in the press subsidy? How much is 50%?
This one does about 730 million.
That's a 2-year number?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can help us understand the chart that you have up there. You're starting with the same target, it looks like. Is the difference that you're able to break out the 5 and 5 versus the 4 and 2 all in that 38.8 million that you estimate is lost, or where is that money coming from?
And I'm going to hand that over to Representative Ben Bakeberg to walk us through that one.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a fantastic question. My name is Representative Ben Bakeberg. I have the privilege to represent 54B, which is Jordan, Prior Lake, part of Shakopee, and then the surrounding townships. So this chart has been developed really in collaboration and taken the feedback from school staff. And when I say school staff, I mean teachers, I mean paraprofessionals, I mean principals, superintendents, school board members. We developed this chart based off of the feedback. And in order to do an apples to apples comparison, based off of what the GOP, how the GOP would allocate money and how the DFL would, we took that same $2.2 billion target. And we heard over and over and over again from school staff, give us the money, give us the flexibility, and let us determine how to spend those dollars based off of the needs of our local community. I'm a middle school principal in Jordan. That's what I do in my normal job. I know what my school needs, okay? I have no clue what Richfield needs. I have no clue what St. Michael Albertville Middle School East needs right now, and I was an administrator there for 5 years. Times have changed. To dictate what schools need from the legislature is simply wrong. And I have not had one school staff, from a school board member to a teacher to a paraprofessional, nobody has said, Ben, tell me how to do my job. I went into education so I could have someone who has no experience in education tell me how to do it. So through this, it was based off of feedback from staff, and you can see it's a glaring difference. We put 5 and 5 on the formula, the DFL puts 4 and 2 on the formula. And we can go down, there's some similarities. School safety and mental health, as a principal, there's nothing more important about my job than to make sure my kids and my staff are safe. It starts with building relationships, so we invest heavily in mental health. And this goes right to the schools. The DFL portion is through grants. Literacy, we've talked about that. I think this is the piece, this new mandate or new staff at MDE, people are fired up about that. I have heard over and over, why are we growing, adding more staff to MDE when they already have about 480 staff members? They have open positions, and as Representative Hudson said, we're expanding government by growing another department. The last thing is money to nonprofits. There are some really good nonprofits in the bill. I will recognize that. But if those nonprofits want to work with schools, let's give that 38, almost $40 million to schools, and then those nonprofits can come to the school and say, we have a fantastic program about how to grow teachers of color. Black Men Teach, great conversation with the director of that. And they could come to Jordan, they could come to a school and say, here's a program, I'd like you to invest in us. Let's give the money to schools, let's give them the local control so that they can innovate to meet the needs of their community. Thank you for the question.
Just to clarify a little bit. So between the requirements that the DFLers are proposing and the money that might be lost on fraud, is that where you're finding that difference that gets you to the higher formula rates, or where is that money coming from?
I'm sorry, can you say that question one more time?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the bottom of what the difference is that allows you to get to
Sure.
the higher formula.
Sure.
Can you point to that?
Yeah, so, and let me make a quick note, thank you, Representative Bakeberg. Representative Bakeberg didn't, and his team and all the educators behind him, they didn't just come up with a chart. He authored a bill, so our bill is authored by educators and a high school principal, not the special interest groups that have helped Governor Walz get elected. That's a huge distinction of what we've done. So specifically to your question, we don't put the UI piece in there. We don't put all the mandates. So our funding formula goes right to the special ed cross-city, right to the reading, and right to the general form. So the schools can then use that on a per pupil allocation to distribute that. So we give them the flexibility, and that's how we distribute the dollars.
That would speak to the proposal that, I mean, Democrats often point to this as significant as the formula funding being indexed to inflation, I believe, after this biennium, if I'm not mistaken. Can someone talk to, is that a good idea, a bad idea? Does that account for real costs that schools would incur?
So I'll do it this way. The Senate and the House Democrats are still in opposition on that. When they work it out, I'll give you the right answer. Other questions?
I'm curious about the literacy, that there's a big difference between, you know, the two parties, which I think is great. I think it's very important. Looking at, you said that half of the kids in our state can't even read at a 50% level. You know, I think that's really scary, and I guess I would be interested to know if any of that money is gonna be put towards, if you just give it to the schools, and, I mean, are there any type of, I guess I would like to see some programs that are gonna address what happened to, you know, where were we before COVID hit for a literacy rate with our kids? Are there programs that are gonna be put in place with some of this money to try to get kids to catch up and bring them up to grade level? Or is there a way to do that in school districts without just giving the money to them and without mandating they have to do this, this, and this? You know, I mean, you can throw money at it, but if it's not some type of program that's actually put into place that's gonna make a change, and just say, give it to you and here, do what you wanna do with it.
Correct, yeah, no, I can address that. And first of all, it's about half of students that cannot read at grade level, not at 50%. So it's about 51% of kids, I believe, can read at grade level, something like that. So in our reading plan, we do not actually send that money directly to schools, that particular chunk of money. That is for the schools, and we don't mandate this because, again, we believe in local control. Even when we desperately want them to change this, I think it needs to come from those locals. We can help instruct them. So that chunk of money that we have there is for schools that want to transition and change their curriculum, wants to get their teachers educated, and wants to get tutoring money for their kids. They can reach out then to the state and say, we want to change our curriculum over. We want reading leads in our schools. We want training for our teachers. We want tutors for our kids. Then the money comes to them. So that particular money will only come for the schools that want to make those changes. If they don't make those changes or want to, they will not get that funding.
Thank you. We're butting up against our time here in the room, so if there's one final question, we probably have time for one more.
One last question.
Before you disband, could we pray for you?
I think we're up against a time limit. If you want to join us in the side room, that'd be great. We'd appreciate it very much. Well, thank you all for attending today. Thanks to this great team that's put together a great plan. I look forward to the discussion on the House floor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.